So Adrian and I, Ruth Chase, are here hosting our second critique. Adrian, do you think I could put you on the spot? You could explain a little bit if anybody's watching who's welcome to come to this group and that we're all SFAI alumni.
Yeah, we started having these sort of general meetings, and it seemed like there was a lot of interest in doing critiques more than just being like a social group. So we started last month. We were gonna see Nona and Alex's work, but there were some scheduling issues, so we looked at Ruth's work instead. And so this month we're back with Alex and Nona, and hopefully we'll have another pair of people we can look at for next month.
Yeah, so if you're watching this and you're an alumni, you don't need to be from Northern California, but you could reach out to Adrian or I, and we would love to put you on the schedule. So I'm going to ask that everybody who's not speaking put their mic on mute. And are you ready, Alex? Let's get started with you. I'm going to share the screen, but Alex, could you tell us like what year and department you were in at SFAI?
And also what you'd like to get out of this critique. What specifically are you looking for?
Yes.
So I graduated in 2008 from the low residency program at SFAI. So I was there during the summer and the winter when most of the full-time people were not there. So we missed out a little bit on that, but I was in the program for 4 years. I originally planned to do 3 years, but I needed that extra year. And you know, my experience at SFAI was wonderful. I had a lot of great professors, and I did a lot of work with Chico State professors on my off time because we had to work with another teacher when we weren't in classes at SFAI. So one of the things that came up for me, and I originally started, I originally started with feminist collage, which is what I was doing when I went into SFAI. And then I started doing portraiture, and then I started doing existential landscapes, which were mostly black and white. And then one of my professors from Chico State told me that I didn't understand color. Probably because I chose not to use color, and that was a conceptual choice, which was fairly effective. But I decided that I would take her advice and explore color. So from that point, I started doing stain paintings, and they were internalized states of emotion, mostly emotional states. And I poured and I stained, and I worked with this kind of a flow style, which is what Shirley and I showed together in a few exhibits in Vancouver and Chico, and I think that was it.
So Alexandra, do you have a particular kind of feedback you want? And also let me know when to go on to the next slide.
Okay. So during my return to landscape, color, I brought back my experiments with color, and I also brought back something I was doing with oil, because I was doing the black and white in oil, which is a wet into wet technique, not usually used for acrylic or oil, but that was what I wanted my exploration to be. So bringing back the color, working with the medium while everything's very washy. The feedback I'm looking for is in regards to my color. I'd like to know if you feel like the color is effective, if it's over the top, if it's working in terms of space and unity, or if I should kind of tone it down a little bit. You can go ahead to the next slide. So these are all local landscapes. I live in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas, and I've been here since 2012. And we've gone through a few things in the foothills, which includes fire. And if you could go back to this one,
This one?
the brown one, yeah. One more, back.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It was starting to take off from me.
Oh, it took a life of its own.
Yeah.
So this is a small piece on paper. And there were times where I literally took the painting and put it under the faucet, which is how I was able to get this really washy effect. So, you know, the paper is gessoed and primed and dried. And then I'm working in many layers. The first two in this slideshow have sold. These were actually very popular and very fun to make. So you could go to the next one. This was my breakthrough piece. I was actually working with a couple from LA that moved to Marysville, and we opened a gallery together called Painting and Sculpture Outpost. And what I was really looking for was critique. So after we did several, maybe 3 critiques, this was the first piece I made with a palette knife and no brush, which was suggested by Joe Lloyd, one of my cohorts in the gallery. Also, I found my liberation with color during this time. So I had a lot of fun with this one. And this is a larger scale. This is 36 by 48, which is kind of my size. You could go to the next one. This one is a longer rectangular one. Both this and the one prior is pre-COVID. So these are 2018, 2019. And this whole series was created pretty much since, you know, during that time, although the Burn series one, which I think is the next one. This is Bald Rock in Chico, if you've ever been to Bald Rock. So these are places that I would frequent to meditate. You know, I kind of went through this process at SFAI, realizing that my feminist series, which was about trauma and rape, kept the viewer in a state of despair and trauma. And that's not necessarily what I wanted or I want to do as an artist. So I kind of went through the recovery process of, you know, how do we heal? And for me, that's a lot of meditation, a lot of time with nature. And so this is another one of my haunts. We could go to the next one. This one is the most recent, and I did a series after the fire in 2017 called the Burn series, and they were all very small format on paper. This is the most reduced in terms of color, and this is one that I followed fairly prescriptively to the smaller version, and I was going to include the smaller version to show you guys, but it's basically the same painting. So after we had another fire, I got evacuated twice last year during the pandemic. A friend of mine said, I really love this painting. I'd like to see it bigger. So I did kind of a commission of this one larger. So this is an example of the color being more reduced. And I'm kind of, this is the one I've done most recently. So this was 2020. You can go to the next one. The one on the left is Feather Falls. If you've done that trip, that was a site of the last fire, which I now have a picture of Feather Falls where it's completely burned and there's no color. I mean, it's just rock and water. I'm very tempted to go back to this one and take some of the green out. It's not as bright in the slide, but the dominant color is this lime green, which some people just really, really love. I don't mind it. I like it. I have it up actually in my home along with that breakthrough piece. I live with it, and it doesn't bother me, but I have this feeling of now after doing the more reduced color one of, you know, do I need to just take a little bit of that green out? So this bottom right one is a small, I'm sorry, the waterfall is a larger format. The bottom right is a small paper piece. So it's about 16 by 20. And it was a study for the next one, if you want to go to the next and final slide, which I have now started reworking and is behind me. Sorry about that. Oh. This one I had in my home and I was living with, and the pink just drove me nuts. I was like, what was I thinking? This is over the top. It's just, it's out of control. I'm not seeing the elements of the smaller paint. It's just not finished. So I'm hoping that I'm not ruining it by going back. And this piece was created pre-pandemic. This was February 2019. So now here it is 2021, and I'm, you know, there's a quote that SFAI professor once repeated and critiqued that, and I don't know who was the abstract painter that was giving the feedback, but he basically told his student, because the student says, oh, I just want to go back and fix, you know, I got to fix this one thing. And it was a painting that was finished. And the professor said, well, are you a painter or are you a shoemaker? Because you can't go back and just fix one piece, right? When you do a painting, inevitably the entire painting changes. And it should, because especially with something like this, everything is wet, everything is, you know, but although this one actually took me quite a bit of time. So I would just like to know, you know, the work I've been doing during the pandemic has been more realistic watercolor of flowers, which is not necessarily me. And I want to go back to this series. You know, and I have actually started working on this one since we started critiques. But if anyone has any feedback in terms of like, stop it, don't mess with it. This is what it looked like in the show. So, you know, the pink from a distance with other things around it wasn't as dominant, but when it's in a smaller space, there's Pepto-Bismol, I can't do it. So I'm gonna just try to fix this a little bit, but please feel free to let me know if I just need to start a new painting.
So how about we unmute, and can you see, you can see all the slides from here? Does everybody see all the slides in one place?
We just see the last one.
Oh, you do? Okay. So
and the
let me,
one on the right is not mine, but sorry.
oh,
I'm just the one on the left.
so let me try again. But okay, so the feedback, remind me what the feedback was specifically that you wanted, Alex, and if we could all unmute, then we can have like a group discussion here.
My main concerns are color unity, you know, and if you're feeling like this is a sophisticated direction for me, you know, or generally how you feel about the series. You know, I did graduate with an MFA, and you know, I have very particular taste about quality and material. I was just looking back over some of my feedback from Pat Plein, and one of the things that she was saying about my pour paintings was the technical aspect. So I want to make sure that I'm refined enough, that I'm showing my skill at a sophisticated level, and that we're getting a sense of unity, and the use of color is appropriate.
Well, I feel like at the, and if anybody wants me to click to a particular piece, I'm just kind of scrolling through so we can see them again. I feel like looking at the way in which the paint is handled ties them all together. So in that regard, like if I saw any of these, I would say, oh, that's an Alexandra Sprowls, you know? And the palette might be different on them, but the handling of the paint ties them together as a series.
Alex, I would like to know more about your intent. I see two different things when I look at these paintings. Some cause my eye to move around and go to specific points, and the painting is restful. The one that's currently up is more an example of that. And others are more like overall action paintings where there's not a specific point that I go to, but I'm engaged at multiple points at multiple times, and the paintings are not so restful. And I'm wondering what your intent is, what you want the viewer to leave with.
That's a great question. You know, when I was doing the work at SFAI, a lot of them had a sense of motion and time. I don't know that I'm necessarily focused on that as much as I'm wanting to resonate a sense of place, a familiarity. I do like that feedback about having areas of like a focal point or areas of rest versus everything moving kind of at the same speed. So my intent would be to allow the viewer to experience my internalized states in these locations, or to somehow share the experience of living in the country and in nature. Now, obviously, this last one is taken from a plane. So I'm working from a photograph that I took from a plane. Most of them have photographic references, but not all. So, you know, these are places that I've actually gone, that I've hiked. I actually think that this last one might be closer to Nevada County, or maybe even up towards Reno. It's hard to tell from the plane. Growing up in Texas, where everything was flat, I think I'm just really fascinated with the structures of the mountains and the hills, and how they relate to one another. Things like atmospheric perspective. But I would have to say, in terms of my intent, bringing the viewer to a kind of calm, meditative state, which is contradictory to my brush strokes because they're wild and crazy. So that's something for me to think about.
Well, for example, the very last one that you did, the more one with muted browns and a small tree in the corner, this one fits with what you just stated, that your intent is very well to me. You know, I am engaged, I pull in, but that small tree centers me. And I continually go back to that, though I visit all points of the painting.
I agree. The left side has got a lot going on, but then that tree is like a little oasis, so it just kind of draws you in. And I love your color sense. I love how bold you can be with color and still keep everything balanced. Like using the pink and the purple in this one in particular, I really love it. Really makes it dynamic, I think.
I wanted to ask if, I mean, you sort of answered the question where you use photo references, but do you ever do plein air painting at these locations?
I don't set up there, but like I'll be painting and then I'll go to the place and I'll hang out there for a bit and then I'll come home and I'll paint again. Like this one was originally about a different site, but the fire happened just to the right of where it happened last time. So I actually went and I checked the color of the trees. But I haven't actually set up and painted outside. I think that would be something, at least just even with watercolor, a small sketchbook to take note of some of those colors. I think that would be great. No,
Yeah,
plein air.
This one that is up right now totally feels like a plein air painting to me. And I've done plein air painting and it's pretty fun, and you pick up on colors and stuff that you don't see in the photos. But this made me think of like the colorist landscape artists. And then another thing that listening to you talk about wanting like a sense of calm in your paintings, it also made me think of Richard Mayhew. I saw an exhibit of his many years ago at the MOAD, and he has some really amazing color usage. And some of, I think, his older work, there's just really wild layering of color that, like, if you can get up close to it and look at it, it's really amazing. And I learned a ton just from looking at his paintings. But there's one, I think, at the De Young, which having seen some of his older work, it's not as amazing in terms of like the color layering, but there is one either at the De Young or the Legion of Honor. But Richard Mayhew is really cool. And I think there's a spiritual influence to his work, and it's very sort of calm too. So that's something to look into. And then the fourth painting in your slideshow kind of reminded me of Diebenkorn a little. For some reason. Maybe it's just the California light.
Yes, bright light, hard shadows. I love Diebenkorn. I love the open spaces, and I think I got a little bit of that on 6 too, where I had a little area of rest with the little green tree. And honestly, that little green tree is how I feel. After just everything, so thank you. I'll check out Richard Mayhew.
Alexandra, if you could put your website and an email in the chat box for everyone, just in case anybody has something more that they want to say, they didn't get a chance to say it, or they prefer to just email you. Is anybody else? I have like 1,000 things I want to say, and I'm realizing that when we do these critiques in the future, we should do one person at a time.
Okay.
Because it just feels like a critique. It gets warmed up, and then we just like it could easily be an hour.
I agree.
I have one more quick comment, because we've been discussing primarily the plein air paintings. I want to speak to the waterfall painting in number 7 with the green. I think this is the most unique painting here, and I just love it. I feel like leave it, go on to other things, maybe come back to it a month from now, a year from now, but there's something about this that is very unique. And I just applaud this. I don't know if it's a combination of palette knife and brush, it may be, but I just wanted to state this before we just limit our discussion to the plein air looking paintings only.
Thank you, Shirley. Yes, this was
these paintings are really strong, and this particular one of the hills or mountains, to me, is different than all the other ones. It's got a different kind of energy with the way the paint is handled. And the one next to it, the waterfall, has this exuberant energy to it. There's nothing delicate about it. It's just right there. It's a waterfall, and this coming off over this rugged cliff. And the way the paint is handled to express that is really energized. And I like the one, this one with the blue sky, and it looks like it's at the coast. And there's a bit of the ocean in the center left of it. And I'm partial to blue anyway, but I like that painting a lot. And it doesn't matter if it's if you're out in plein air or not. It's what you internalize when you're out there and you come back to the studio, and it comes up from those impressions you brought back to the studio. And I think that's probably better than trying to duplicate what you see outside when you're out there. It's what you've internalized while you were out there, and you bring it back to the studio, and these energetic paintings come up. And the one with the where it depicts the fire and the little tree off to the right reminds me of a manzanita tree. And because we have a lot of manzanita on our property, and this is, I don't know, these paintings are they're really good. They're really strong paintings. And yeah.
So John, I like
good work.
John, I like what you said, and it made me realize what I wanted to articulate is because they're painted in her own style, it gives us another way to view a landscape, another way to view or interpret or experience a waterfall.
I just want to add to what Shirley said about the waterfall painting. I love it the way it is. And if you want to revisit it, maybe do another painting of the same waterfall. But I think that one is perfect the way it is. I wouldn't change anything. And I'm also looking at the time, and in order to be fair to Nona, I think we're going to have to wrap this up fairly quickly.
I appreciate it. I got definitely what I needed. I'll continue with this work and put the watercolors down.
Yeah, and I will email you because I have some more I want to say, and I encourage everybody who has more to say to email Alex. I mean, this is what we're here for, is to support.
Please do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nona, take it away, girl.
Let me share my screen. So all of you can see this, right? Do you want me to make it bigger? Is that better? So I graduated SFAI in 2014 with a BFA in painting. I was a transfer student, so I was only there for 2.5 years. I really took advantage of like the interdisciplinary aspect of it. And I took printmaking classes and film classes. Sometimes I wish I had have taken more painting classes, but then on the other hand, I don't really regret it. So after graduating, I took a break from making my own art, and I worked in film for a while, and then I ended up with an office job, which I really missed being creative. And so a little over a year ago, I started slowly getting back into making my own work again, and really trying to be conscientious of my own sort of practice and habits. And then more recently, it's picked up, and all of these works are from the last 6 months about. And I'm really just trying to, steadily, build the habit of having to practice again. And I'm still really a bit intimidated to just dive back into like oil painting on a big canvas. So I'm kind of working my way up. And most of these are all works on paper. This is a colored pencil. The first like 4 or 5 are colored pencils, and I'm not going to say too much about each individual one. I like to do people, like portraits, but eventually I want to start incorporating more of the figure and work larger scale. I sort of have space limitations too right now, so working on paper I find is less intimidating, and it's a lot easier to just throw it in a drawer. So I'm really interested in there being like strong emotional expression. My style is very influenced by Cubism and Surrealism. They're very spontaneous and impulsive in their like inception. Like I don't really have an idea of what I'm gonna paint or draw. I just sort of draw it. I get an image and I just put it out. And then I do end up spending like a lot of time building up layers. So like the colored pencil drawings like might have taken 10 hours. These are oil pastel on paper. These ones maybe took 2 hours each. And as far as like feedback, I'm sort of really interested in any type of feedback. Ideas about themes to explore, strengths and weaknesses, other artists to look at. This is one of the earlier ones I did. This is oil paint on, I think Arch's oil paint paper. And these ones I consider like to be sketches where I spent like maybe 2 or 3 hours on them, maybe over 1 or 2 days. This is a more recent one. And sometimes I incorporate like animal aspects into the people. And then this is my most recent one where this is an oil paint on linen panel. I decided I'd done enough sketches on paper. I was gonna step it up a little. This one I spent a lot more time on and built up a lot more layers. And I never painted on linen before and I enjoyed that. And this one actually had an oil ground, which I only did once before. And so it was still like a really new experience for me. But I'm definitely trying to regain a lot of like technical skills that I feel like I've forgotten or lost while still trying new things. So I can, oh, and then my email and my Instagram. I've been posting a lot of my art on Instagram because it helps me feel accountable, and I sort of have to like explain like what I'm doing a little bit. But let me change, I can change the view so you can see all of them at once. Well, that's not quite all of them, but so that's all I have to say.
So Nona, you reference them as people, but they are all women, yes?
In this one isn't really, but I think a lot of them, I do have some that I didn't show that aren't women, so it's not like, I also want to do larger ones that have more than one figure, but right now, yeah, they are mostly women, and I think that's something I've been noticing and need to think about why I'm doing that and what is it that I want to say about that.
I have a preference towards the ones that are tidy and like meticulously handled with the pencils, I believe. And the reason why I love that is I love the place between where they're kind of chaotic and imaginative, but then there's this feeling of control over the materials. And for some reason, that those two aspects in contrast are really visually pleasing to me.
Thanks.
And I have to say that I relate to them emotionally because it's, well, especially maybe it might even be the setup of this last year and a half.
I'm hoping that people will see something in it that, they're very emotional to me often, and some more than others, and I want people to relate to them in some way.
If I were to describe these pieces, I would use the term feminist cubism. And I think it's something perhaps you have created. I also feel that these are young women. I'm also wondering if they are self-portraits of you at different times. They seem very fragile, as though they need to be protected. For that reason, I love the works that are done in colored pencil, because colored pencil is a delicate medium, a medium that requires focus and careful application. And there's something that's very delicate about this medium that resonates with the works themselves for me.
Thanks. I do put a lot of like what I'm experiencing into them. So while they may not be like self-portraits per se, like I think there is a lot of, you know, my own experiences in them.
Nona, is there a basic humor to all of them?
I do think there is humor in them, like even in like the more serious ones, like the depressed woman. I'm not sure how to describe the humor in it, but I mean, I think they are kind of funny and they're serious without being too serious. I have a really hard time articulating myself when I try to talk about the thought and emotional process in creating them. So they're kind of, my brain gets kind of convoluted, and putting it out on paper really helps. So I get really tongue-tied, I guess, when I try to talk about like what the emotional or psychological experience is for me.
I think the depressed woman, part of the humor is that little Mary Tyler Moore flip in her hairdo. It kind of contrasts with everything else that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, in number 6, what is that adjective in the title? I don't know what that word means.
So in my Instagram post, like I do explain that. So I was once living in San Miguel, which is like by Paso Robles near the Central Coast, and it's very hot and dry. It's considered, I think, like the high desert there. And I got out of the shower once, and there was this insect on the floor, which I had never seen, called a salufagid. I think they're also called like wind spiders or something, but they are really creepy, like cross between like a scorpion with this squishy beige abdomen. Look it up. They're really creepy. Anyways, this was like 14 or 15 years ago, and it really left quite an impression on me because I'd never seen one since, and I didn't know they existed. And so I was drawing this female character and just kind of going with the flow of how I wanted her limbs to look. And I drew this really extended abdomen. And at first I thought like it was going to be a wasp abdomen, and I was looking at some pictures of wasps, but I didn't, I guess I ended up choosing the salufagid because it kind of has this squishy, soft feeling to it. And this doesn't have like the hard, you know, like insect exoskeleton shell feel to it. I feel like this could be a little squishier. And so that's how that came about. But I had no idea it was going to be that when I started it. And it was only like through the creation of it that I came to the realization this is a salufagid. So that's what that means.
Cool. I also agree with Ruth. I'm more engaged by the ones that are more fully rendered and worked up than the sketchier ones. Not that the sketchier ones aren't good too, but I just find more to engage with.
Yeah, my dog is barking. Lady, go. She's really old and she barks at everything now. I mean, she's not super old. She's 13, but let me just put her out in the other room. Lady, go.
I'm trying to think of this male painter that was brought up a lot in our critiques. I don't know why his name. He had a cartoon aspect, and there was always a cigar, and he used actually used pink a lot. Gosh, I can't believe I can't remember his name.
I like this sense of fleshiness on the pencils, that I get like on the suffragette, if I said that right, number 6, you could see like you get a real feeling of like breast and flesh on the breast, and in the other faces too, there's this feeling of like real flesh. Like there's these moments where you're reminded, kind of like a trip, like I've tripped out before on hallucinogenics, and there's that play between reality and the trip or the place that it takes you. I also love that you're working with pencils and they're being like, seeing pencil work like this is actually quite inspiring. It makes me even think about getting pencils out. And as somebody who's done so much charcoal drawing, and over the years of doing charcoal, I heard over and over again, so where's your real work, right? Or do these are your practice pieces, but what's your real work? And so as somebody who hates that and loves charcoal as its own medium, that's a standalone medium, I love that you're breaking out the pencils.
Thanks.
Really do.
I hadn't done much in pencils before, and the thing with pencils is experimenting with the layering and stuff really gave me the urge to try to do more oil painting, which is kind of what I was hoping. But I do really like the colored pencils. They're very convenient, and there's a lot you can do with them. I think around here, I started getting nervous about the lighter tones, and I think I'm not as happy with the coloring in the figure. I spent a lot of time on the hair, but I feel like I had made some mistakes too in layering, and I wasn't as happy with it. And so this was the last colored pencil one I did, and I felt like I needed to take a break from colored pencils. And at that point, I think I finished this painting, which had been sitting around, and then I started on this one. And I'm hoping that I'll get my painting skills to a point where I can get some of the detail and layered effects that are in the colored pencil, but with, some of the other qualities of oil paint.
Those are beautiful transitions. The value transitions, especially of the colored pencil ones, are just stunning. I also really like number 2. It feels almost like the back of her head is a plate or a ceramic, something from the kitchen, which for me is a nice conceptual reference.
Thanks.
Philip Guston was who I was thinking of, that has this kind of comic seriousness.
Could you repeat that?
About the plate?
Oh, Philip Guston.
Philip Guston, yes.
Okay, thanks.
I was thinking more like Peter Saul. Do you know him?
I've actually so it's actually really funny. So one of the things that really got me back into making my own art is following artists on Instagram, and Peter Saul Archive is one of the ones that I follow. And I've been feeling like, I've been seeing little bits of what I've seen. Sweetie, can you tell Grandma and Grandpa that? Because I can't help you right now. Sorry, my son interrupted. But I want to look more into Peter Saul too, because I have responded to his work recently and have been thinking about it. And I find it really interesting that you made that connection.
I keep thinking about, your work, trying to think how you could take it farther. It seems very like you're really got a very solid group here that's fully realized, but I know, every artist wants to like, well, what's next kind of thing. I was thinking like the Peter Saul, one thing about his portraits that are similar is he takes it to this extremeness of just violence and grossness, and that just tests the boundaries of what a viewer can handle. I'm not sure what the point of that is, but and I don't know if that would really be a good direction for you. I was thinking more like I liked your oil paints. Seems like that is something that you know, like is inspiring you right now and worth pursuing. The other thing I was thinking of in some of these is space. Like a lot of them, it's very like a conventional sort of portrait spatially and compositionally, but like the one where there's like, she's got a triangular neck. You said it was the first one that you did? No, way down. The green, it's that one. Yeah. Like that one, there's this really uncomfortable thing happening at the bottom where it just looks like, I don't know, like her head's gonna fall over, you know, this very uncomfortable point. And then the next one with that head, even though it's, you know, I understand it's like a neck coming out of a shoulders, but spatially it's like the blue goes way back and the orange comes really forward. So there's this strange stretching out in depth wise. And I don't know if you maybe could play around with that some more. Another thing in the last one, there's kind of a realism happening a little bit more than the others. And you said you're influenced by surrealism, and in a lot of surrealist paintings you'll have, or in that game they play with you know, exquisite corpse, where you have portions of the paper or the composition, like the top doesn't match the bottom. You could have like there's this strange disjunction between the top, you know, one part and the other, which is kind of happening here with like the realism of the hair and the ear. And then just on the right hand side, everything gets exaggerated in this very uncomfortable way. And then that reminds me too, in surrealism, you have it's very like the whole id comes out, and there's a lot of sexual references. I don't know if that, you know, that could be included too. Anyway, there's some thoughts.
Yeah, that's a lot to think about. And I really appreciate that feedback. I do think I need to push things more. I mean, looking at all of them, they are all, I mean, I'm starting to experiment more with more of the figure. But for the sizes that I'm working in, I want to work bigger if I'm going to do more of the figure. But I do feel like, you know, they're all portraits, and they all sort of have a person in the middle with, you know, a background. And so I want to push myself more and just keep experimenting. But I think I feel like I've been getting some really useful feedback, and you know, I don't know why I like doing them weird and exaggerated, and but that just is what I'm drawn to. And it's kind of funny because before I went to art school, I was sort of making stuff in a similar vein. And then when I was at school, you know, I tried lots of different things because that's what you're supposed to do. And then, you know, I still sort of am coming back to like the same sort of stylistic themes, and I need to sort of probe what that means to me.
To me, a real strength of all these works, the oil pieces as well as the colored pencil drawings, is a sense of introspection, self-examination. So often surrealistic works are demanding something, directing us in some way, but these do not. And I think that's a definite strength. These women are examining their lives, looking at something, And I like that sense of self-examination, introspection. I think it's a real strength with these paintings and drawings, and something that's very unique.
Thank you. That makes me feel good, because I feel like that's a big part of what I'm doing. Is I spend a lot of time, and even more so this year, but you know, on the other hand, I do examine myself a lot, and I think I put a lot of that in there. On the other hand, I know there are things I'm not addressing. And so sometimes I feel like for me to take my work to the next level, I need to address those things that I may not want to address, and may not want to address like publicly in a painting. But if this is sort of the purpose of why I'm making the art, then I feel like in order to make that grow, if I want to continue on this vein, then I need to sort of probe myself more.
Do private paintings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if I kept it to myself, it's still like a public statement. Like, even if I were to write, I'm one of those people where like, I'm not even going to write my thoughts in a journal, because then it's out of my head. And then it's not private anymore. So I think these are all, I'm very intrigued that you got that sense of introspection and self-examination from looking at them. And I have to say, I'm happy that that's what's coming across to you. And it makes me, it's something I need to analyze further too.
What's the size of the drawings and paintings?
So the biggest one is 16 by 20, which is this. And then this is all, I should have looked, but like maybe the tallest dimension is 16 or 18. And then these are around the same size. So this one's actually really small, like maybe 7 by 5.
Well, I see the pencil drawings. The pencil medium has, to me, more control of how you apply the color, how you render. And the last one, the last painting of the woman, the looker, seemed to me, you developed so much control with the paint. It's almost like a pencil drawing. I can't tell really, because you rendered the paint so well, the difference between this one and the earlier pencil drawings. At first, I thought it was a pencil drawing, but I like the way you controlled the paint in the looker.
Thanks.
And the way you handled it, and it makes it seem rendered as well as the pencil drawings.
Thank you. I did, like, for these earlier oil paints, since I was just getting back into it, I tend to psych myself out a lot, and I try to be aware of when I'm doing that. So I set out with the goal of, I'm just going to get the idea on the paper, and it's going to be sketchy and gestural and painterly. By the time, I think then working towards the pencil, I definitely was going with something more controlled and precise, but with the idea that I would be working up to getting somewhere closer to that in painting. But I do really like some of the gestural painterly stuff that you can get in an oil painting or just with paint in general. And so I tried to keep some of that in there, like with the highlights on the eyes. And I'm hoping, to experiment more with just a combination between like the more controlled passages and then, some stuff where it's just painterly and gestural. But I was really scared and intimidated for quite a while, thinking that, I wouldn't be able to achieve the degree of control that I wanted to. And the pencil drawings really helped me to sort of build up my confidence and even just get a real strong craving to get back into painting. So I'm really glad that you can appreciate the difference in like the application of paint between this more sketchy ones and this one, because that's what I'm working towards.
Have you experimented with water soluble colored pencils?
Not recently. I did buy some gouaches, and I'm gonna try some watercolor pencil and possibly layering it with gouache or even the non water soluble pencil. But I don't have a ton of free time to spend on it. So right now I've got, I kind of just knowing my sort of work patterns. I tend to, I'll do oil paints for a while, and then I'll reach a point where I need to transition to a different medium, although I'm trying to mix it up. But yeah, I'm gonna hopefully try watercolor pencils soon and maybe mix in some gouache in there.
Just seemed like it could be kind of a transition between drawing and painting, because you can blend the colors a little bit with the water.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I just wanted to say on the shoulder of Looker, I love how the shoulder kind of goes into her hair and vice versa. I think that's really cool.
Thanks.
I feel in most of them I have a strong sense of movement, and I guess like Alex's brush strokes, there's something in them that is kind of struggling. Something it's like this emotional state that I really kind of feel of things. The figure, the visual, the figure is like struggling to move from being like human-like to something else, like with all those things. It's definitely in the pencils one, and also in this one. And I really like that. I feel like you kind of captured something very momentarily, very kind of, had you done it like an hour later, excuse me, it would be disfigured in a different way. So I really love that, and kind of I find it enchanting.
Thanks. I do feel like my works are kind of impulsive, and maybe that's, influencing what you're picking up on. But I do feel like they're a sustained impulsivity, because like I'll just put down the initial lines, but then I'll sort of sustain that impulse and finish it. And sometimes it will take 10 hours or longer. But I'm really pleased that you pick up on that, and that's how it's translating.
This one, the Looker, for me has some kind of a Spanish, and maybe it's the dolly coming through, the surrealist influence, but it has a sense of time and almost location. What I was seeing with the feeling of the plate behind the head, I now feel with the hair, and I love that spot too on the shoulder where it's almost like a woody tree trunk, or there's something very natural and earthy about this one. So I like that some of them have these almost suggested locations or references within the figure itself.
Thanks.
So I'm going to jump in here to see if we have any final comments, because since we've started these meetings, I took a job at a gallery and I have to go to work. So do we have any final comments? And also, Nona, can you put your email? I know you showed it to us, but could you put it in the feed for anybody, for everyone, in case they want to email additional comments?
And thank you everybody so much for your time and feedback.
Yeah, I had a comment, just general. I don't know if anybody in the Nevada City, Grass Valley area would want to get together in person just to hang out and talk art and that kind of thing. So, or if you're from out of town and you want to come to Nevada City, I don't know, anybody interested in that, or is there a way to send an email out or something, or I don't know how to do that, to set that up.
I would be interested, and I would say that if you have a place in mind, Dave, that's great. And if you don't, we have a backyard that's set up with lots of space and shade.
Okay.
Be a public place. So I'm up for that.
Okay, that'd be fun, I think. You know, just to get a cup of coffee or a beer or something like that.
That sounds like a good way to go. I'm up for beer.
Okay, good.
And
All
I'm
right.
up for it.
Nice.
All right, good.
I would be if I lived closer.
I know, soon. Maybe when you come to town, we can plan that.
A nice place
Maybe
to
at
visit.
my opening in August.
Definitely.
Oh wow, yeah, definitely. We have to do that.
So
Is there an email list or something is that available?
yeah, I will send you the emails of everybody in this group. I'm going to stop the recording here.